Then if you look at the what will happen post COVID, I'm sure as we come to the end of the COVID and as we come back to normal working, there'll be a new baseline. What changes then? First of all, the revenue. So if the number one focus is to bring back your revenue, and the next thing is people want to make sure that cost reductions are in place and try to eliminate or continue to cut their costs. Third is retooling or upscaling the skill force. The RPA and AI is a good area to actually to provide new way to bring back workforce in new areas, right? Finally, creating an agile environment, particularly with e-commerce and fintech and digital banking that we have seen with cloud and SaaS. Agility is very important to thrive and do really well in post-COVID world. And most of these things are only possible if you, at the end of the day, provide a good customer experience and service to users and consumers that they fall in love with your solutions. Where do we get started? I actually call it the three steps to the journey. The first is make sure you have a cloud native SaaS solutions. So you want to make sure you have implemented either gone cloud or implemented cloud to some level or full degree as a cloud native SaaS solution. Second is make sure the core of those solutions, AI, it's AI first approach or AI native solution. AI should not be afterthought in your solution. Third is make this automation through a technology called conversational RPA. Because RPA itself is good, hyper automation to achieve that, you have to include RPA with AI and conversation. Conversation means it's a dialogue. You want users to interact with RPA in a very natural, simple English language to get the job done. The need for common AI interface is constantly increasing. At home, we are using Alexa from Amazon, Google Home for interacting. We have seen these services from Netflix, or we see it in the consumer world with Snapchat, Instagram, etc. Right? So the same common AI interfaces are going to surface in the enterprise, and they're already happening there. It's a new way to provide interface to the existing apps and services or for new. Users would love to use this thing because this provides them a way to interact and get their job done without without being blocked or without waiting for a human to provide the services. Particularly self-service, self-help interfaces will happen through conversational platforms going forward. So the key for hyper automation is taking the all these workflows that used to be traditionally manual, human, people driven. You want to marry that with AI. And I want to give you an example from an employee perspective. From employee perspective, it could be from an activating software to I want a OneDrive access to all the way down to I have my calendar issues, etc. Right? So things can be quite wide ranging in terms of requests. So if you're an employer user and you want to get an access to a Zoom request, here is an example of what somebody would go through to provision a Zoom. It requires, like in any company, to log in an account, create an account, giving the thing. Employee has to go through almost 10 to 15 steps to before they get an access to a Zoom of their own, on the average. In some companies, it's much longer, and we've been polling this across many customers. If you know, see that if I were to automate all those workflow steps for a user, and if Aisera is a solution where it can take the request from a user on a Zoom chat, on a Slack or Microsoft Teams, or through a phone, and able to provision him and give access to it in few seconds, or I call it in, let's say, in a minute, for example, if you want to automate the whole thing, that's a game changing.